friends. It's Jeff. Many of you know we've been working on big things at aroundthecircle.org. First, we had 10 new members in August, and as we promised, we donated their August dollars to the Weld County Food Bank. This will provide 600 meals for food insecure people in our town in the memory of Robin Williams, and we're very grateful for them. Second, we're going to create a new monthly tier at Around the Circle. This is the $125 tier for those of you who are really serious. This is going to include everything that the normal $20 membership includes. Weekly videos, extended interviews, question and answer with us, our audiobook, but we're adding 1 hour per month of mistyping with me or 90 minutes of me leading your book group of 5 or more readers. Most of you have heard our mistyping conversations. If you've been interested in doing mistyping with me, or you have someone you care about who wants to sit down, sign up. We'll send you a link. Or if you are leading a study through our book, Around the Circle, sign up. I'll meet with you online once a month until we're done, or until the next book comes out, or until, I suppose, you feel like you got what you needed. Thirdly, we're going to add 2 big additions to our $20 membership. Coming November 1st, we will be hosting a monthly Saturday morning workshop for all members, including free members in 2025. This is going to be hosted by myself, by Katie Whitlock, and we're going to be talking about numbers in excess, which is a vital topic, and I hear 0 people talking about it. We already have 25 people signed up, so go there for this. Second, Katie and I are going to begin posting a regular video cast on Sundays called Rewired, in which we're going to tackle topics in Enneagram world that are seldom discussed but need some heavy attention, and we'll start with a half dozen in-depth episodes on the Enneagram and gender. And third, we're going to begin sending our invitations to be on our stress and security panels in 2026. We want people who want to talk to us about their type. These will be recorded. These will be in-depth discussions and available only to members. So if you are interested in our best content, want to be involved in our conversations, go sign up. Presently, we have nearly 500 listeners who have a free membership at Around the Circle, and with those free memberships, they get access to unreleased interviews, access to early book chapters, and for the next 2 months, they're going to have invitations to all of our online workshops and panels. So go sign up, take a look at what we're doing. We would be thrilled to connect with you there, and huge thanks to all of you who have chosen to support us already for more than 5 years. You guys are the best, and I'm incredibly grateful. I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I am a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado. With me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
We're talking generations again with Katie Whitlock.
Hey.
Excellent.
Welcome. I so enjoyed our first conversation, mostly because it was about me. But we will pivot now to other folks, and we're picking up millennials today, which I have realized is the hardest word in the English language to spell. I thought it was restaurant, but...
Millennial.
We could have had Gen Y. Now we have to write out millennials every time we want to write it.
Why did Gen Y go away?
My guess is that, in part, millennials did not want to be forced to follow in the footsteps of those behind them.
We'll discuss why. Born 1980 to 1996. I see this generation kind of as the tech-savvy, socially conscious, environmentally aware generation.
Avocado toast eating snowflakes, man.
This seems to me a very inclusive generation. Have introduced a lot of language about personal health, work-life balance that was much needed. And I love avocado toast, by the way.
I'm not sure that I've ever had it. I'm the
You've never
worst
had it?
Really?
millennial. Yeah.
That's crazy that you've never had it.
Millennials, please forgive me. It feels silly to me to go to a store and pay someone to spread avocado on a piece of toast.
Oh, it is, for sure.
Like, for me, toast is never something that I want to pay for. It's the side that comes with my plate of eggs and bacon.
Yeah.
Avocados are expensive, though. I mean, they're more expensive than eggs.
Yeah, and people put too much avocado.
Yeah.
There's like a whole avocado on each side of your toast.
Mm-hmm.
It just tastes like dirt. I don't
Just gotta
want that.
balance it out.
And there's just
Doesn't
no
make any
nutritional
sense.
value, like, at all, basically. It's just toast and avocado, like you're hungry 30 minutes
Yeah.
later.
I'm on board. I don't
And you
get
paid
it.
$16 for it.
You're so wrong. Avocados are the only food that tastes the same in heaven as they do on planet Earth.
How would you know that?
I foresee that they will be the same. Well, now here's the thing, friends. TJ is actually honorary Gen X because he doesn't care if anyone knows about anything that he does, but
It's really true.
he is likewise an elder millennial.
Yep.
So, to get
Born in
us rolling,
85, but my soul is old. So my soul
Elder soul.
has a foot firmly planted in Gen X.
I'll list all the people here in a second, but just to get us moving, what stands out to you most about your generation?
Do we want to talk about songs?
Oh,
yeah.
I do want to talk about songs.
Yeah.
Okay, so friends, we're talking about generations. Each of us represent one of three generations, Z, Millennial, and X. And to kind of get into the mindset perspective, I personally think that so much of the vantage point of our generation affects how we see the world almost as much as our Enneagram type, in my view. There's so much that, like, how you grew up, the technologies that surrounded you, the events that characterized your early upbringing, these end up having huge influence in how you are in the world, and they're worth talking about as one of those similar lenses. One way to get into this is to just talk about, what are the distinctions here, and a fun way to get in is just to talk about pop culture. So we're talking songs today.
Surprise,
Katie, why
surprise.
don't-
The Gen Xer likes to talk about pop culture.
I had never been aware that was the thing until it got brought up. I'm like, oh crap, you're right. My generation just consumes media. That's what we do. That was our shtick, apparently. But Katie, if you think about a song that characterizes your generation, what comes to mind?
So this is less a song that we all would have grown up listening to and more just a song that I think we all really relate to. So I'm thinking of Bo Burnham's Welcome to the Internet song. Have you seen his Inside special on Netflix?
I
know what I'm
do
talking
not
about?
know this.
Okay,
Both
go
of
look
us
it up.
oldies do not know what you're
Okay,
talking about.
have either of you have not seen the special on Netflix?
No.
No.
Okay, so Bo
I
Burnham.
know Bo Burnham.
Yeah,
I have not seen that.
he is not a Gen. He's a millennial, right? He probably was
so.
born. I don't know when he was born, but I think in 2021 he came out with this Netflix special where he basically all through COVID he just sat in like this shed outside his house and put together a music special. So he wrote a bunch of songs, and they're like, you like sob watching it. It is so good. There's so much like social comment. It's his thing is social commentary, right? So it's so good in a way that like kind of only Bo Burnham can do. And there's this one song called Welcome to the Internet. It's one of the most famous ones from the special. And he's kind of playing like this evil, like he's kind of personifying the internet, or he's personifying like the people who run the internet. And it's about welcome to the internet. There's pictures of cats. There's pictures of your grandma. There's a recipe to build a bomb. There's like, once you get into the internet, you just have to get into all of it and how it like destroys your relationship with like anything normal. And you really just, it's also just the visuals. Like it's so good. And I think the kind of haunting, like this feels like it should be fun, but also it feels really evil. That kind of message, I think a lot of Gen Xers would, or excuse me, Gen Zers would relate to about their relationship with the internet. So it only came out 4 years ago, so technically it's not really a Gen Z song, but that's my nomination.
And I looked it up. He was born in 1990.
Yeah, so he's definitely a millennial.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people who are involved with the internet would relate to it, but there's something about, I think, growing up with the internet and not ever knowing anything different, but feeling this vague, like, I know there used to be something different, even if I've never understood it. Like that, there's this vague, like, anxiety throughout the whole song about it. It's really good. And he has this, like, crazy evil laugh right in the middle of it that's really upsetting.
Something to be said about our generation and self-actualization and what the artwork that kind of unveils this is what's been going on in our hearts and bringing language to it. That will at least be what characterizes my song. So that I think that's super important. What you say, Teach?
So I have the necessary 2 songs. So first, I Want It That Way, or really anything by that guy. What was his name? Max Martin. He wrote like all of the pop songs of the 90s and early 2000s. And so if you know a really good pop song of that period, it was probably written by this one guy. I Want It That Way, I think, is an excellent representation of millennial mindset and music appreciation, because it was like peak. Everyone knew that song at that time. And then I want to immediately follow that by Iron and Wine's Such Great Heights.
Oh my gosh, I love that song.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's a cover. It's a really like super low key, and it's indie. I think the like high commercialism of Max Martin's pop music as portrayed by boy bands combined with the independent but highly successful work of cover artists like Iron and Wine. You got to put those things together if you're going to understand millennial tastes.
Is Iron and Wine a cover artist?
Not necessarily. He does a lot of covers.
Okay.
And a ton of collaboration.
Yeah.
The thing that hits me there, especially the aughts, is how few bands there are. Like if you were to say name a 90s band, I could name 50. If you say name some great bands from the aughts, I can name one.
And a ton of the quote unquote bands were actually 5 guys singing.
Yeah. I'm also going to do the necessary 2 songs. The obvious answer for my generation is Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is an angry anthem that doesn't appear to have a lot of meaning, but it does. A lot of free association going on there. TJ and I actually did a deep dive into Kurt Cobain and his work in our Fantastic Songwriters series, which for my money, I think maybe my favorite that we've ever done was Songwriters.
That's a good one.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just taken from our discussion of Cobain, like there's a meaninglessness full of meaning.
Yeah.
That I think is great for Gen X.
For Gen X.
That's a good line.
I think the right answer, however, is Don't You Forget About Me, which is by the Simple Minds, which is the theme song to Breakfast Club, and characterizes a lot of the look at me that goes on with our generation. Like somebody has clearly forgotten me and I want to be seen again. That actually is all over Cobain's work as well. But the people are not looking at me, wrapped up with that movie and finding found family. It just feels like that hits hard. The third is it just came to mind is Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Know for different reasons. But I'm not going to go down that road. Never mind.
I mean, if you want to talk about Alanis Morissette, I could go down that road.
Yeah,
I'm on board.
I'm gonna destroy our conversation about millennials if I go down this road. The thing about millennials that really hit me looking at the list, and by the way, we're looking at Jean Twinge's book Generations, the real difference between Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, silent, and what they mean for America's future. And she does a great job of naming some of the people in popular culture politics and the rest, who were born in these generations, just to get a sense of this is the sort of person born at this time that is contributing and creating American culture. And like, listen to this list. Millennial artists and athletes of all things really have had a lot of influence. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Seth Rogen, Donald Glover, Elliot Page, Beyonce, Taylor Swift. Just those 6. We could spend 3 hours talking about the contribution of those 6 and why they are transitional, pivotal people in our culture. Any thoughts there before I list off some others?
Can you remind me? So I know we talked about this last time and I forget the conclusion that the book comes to. So if a millennial is making media for a younger audience, so like I grew up on like Seth Rogen's media, right? Because by the time he was old enough to create it, I was a kid, right? Mm-hmm. So his media that he creates for the purpose of this conversation, are we calling that millennial media or are we calling that Gen Z media? Like if I grew up on it, but it was created by somebody else, who are we attributing that to?
You got thoughts, Teach?
I don't know that we could necessarily make a blanket rule there.
Okay.
Yeah, because you grew up on Seth Rogen's stuff, but he definitely wasn't writing it for kids.
Yeah, and it's all like all the stuff I grew up on when I was a kid. Their depictions of high school were still very millennial, I think. Like it was not the high school that I went to, right?
Yeah.
Eventually. Okay. That just so that I know.
I think it's still the case that there's going to be things in the media created by the generation before us where some people are just the band leader. They're the people who are moving the younger folks into the next era. And I think like these are those sorts of folks. They're just on the forefront of what's next. And oftentimes that just means that they're a generation prior, yet apparently speaking in a way that really connects to the people at hand. And that matters, I think.
Yeah.
We mentioned it last time. Zuckerberg is a millennial, but really just the last of the tech folk, because there really aren't a lot more after Zuck. That there's people that are making like Snapchat and Instagram, but those get gobbled up by Zuckerberg.
And they're not like
by all the Gen X
changing
people.
the landscape of tech, I feel like, in the same way,
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Agreed. The millennial politicians are interesting. Buttigieg is a millennial. Ossoff is a millennial. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is millennial.
JD
And the
Vance
vice president.
is a millennial?
The vice president is a millennial, and maybe the president here soon, apparently.
Allegedly.
And that strikes me as super interesting.
Yeah.
These folks feel like they have weight in our culture, and I feel like a lot of that is because they do speak to their generation and can rally their generation to see them. And kind of, any thoughts on these guys?
I could totally derail this by suggesting that some of the names on this list are successful in their spaces because they're speaking to the generation that elected them. And some of them are successful in their spaces because they're speaking to their own generation.
Yeah.
Who's the generation that elected? What do you mean?
Boomers.
Do you want to talk
Sarah
more about
Huckabee Sanders and J.D.
that?
Vance.
Yeah.
I don't... As someone who does not live in Ohio or... Where is she from? Alabama? Georgia.
She's from Georgia.
I've never even stepped foot in Georgia. I don't think I've been in Ohio either, but I would guess from my limited perspective that within the more conservative spaces, people like Sanders and Vance are more championed by the generations above them than they are by their peers.
Yeah.
I think that might just be the nature of conservative politics, that they're always looking for younger people who will embrace the past, because that's what conservatism is.
Yep.
It's like we need to remind ourselves of how great things were before, whereas you're always going to find younger people who are saying we need to push the ball forward, and that by its nature is progressive.
Right.
Yeah. You guys know I live 10 minutes away from JD Vance.
Really? From his house?
From his house.
His district?
From his house.
Come on.
So I'll just say he comes into the restaurant I work at a lot. Like you just see him around, right? And I'll just say that's absolutely true. All of that. Like it's the older, more conservative generation around here that talks about him one way, and then if you step into any younger space when he's around, it's not so kind. So for sure, that is definitely true. Katie
Whitlock hobnobbing with the vice president.
Right. But when I look at this list of politicians, my first reaction is like, these are all the people on Twitter. It is certainly the left leaning people, but like these are the people that I recognize that talk directly to people through social media. And like, I don't know if they started that, but to me, in my head, this was like the first generation of people who started to do this kind of thing, right? You felt like you had direct access to these politicians.
Well, and that's one of the things that Twinge brings up, like specifically thinking about AOC, that like after she was elected, she was posting like short videos that like almost like letting the rest of us into this guarded space where she was like, look at my swag bag. Look at the underground tunnels. Like she was bringing us in a way that nobody else had ever done before because she's so active on social media.
Right.
I feel like there's a ton to say there in terms of how power and media overlap and move through. Clearly, we could talk 2016 and Twitter all day long. And we could talk 2024 and podcasts all day long. And the way that power, and not just power, but your personality being put forth into a democratic society that, that votes has mattered from FDR and radio to Kennedy and TV. I'm not saying anything new here to what we see today.
Yeah.
The people that were most interesting to me in this list were the athletes of all things. No list of athletes mattered to me until we get here. Athletes: Venus and Serena Williams, LeBron James, Megan Rapinoe, and Colin Kaepernick, all millennials. The reason this hit me is that there is a political social change kind of quality that has entered into sports at this point in time. I didn't see that at all with Gen X athletes.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the lines of what I was saying about politicians, but I think there's this new understanding of maybe what democracy looks like, what it is to have shared politics with everybody, and what it means to have a democracy is like everybody gets to know the inside stuff now, whereas before it did feel like politics were this separate thing that the politicians went and did. Now politics is this thing that everybody does. I don't know if that's true.
I think that is true.
But it does, like, we expect it in places that I don't think older generations expected it, right? And I see that as a big frustration for some older generations. Like when Colin Kaepernick was doing all his stuff, like, why isn't he just playing sports, right? But there seems to be this, like, AOC inviting us into, they used to hide this from you. I'll bring you in. Athletes deciding to be political in front of people and not hiding it away. Like, it's this very out loud in front of people new way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
It also shows some of the polarization that takes place. Both Colin Kaepernick and Tim Tebow take knees before football games, and they're divisive in very, very, very different ways. And it's worth naming how our culture is interpreting the self-expression of the people who are on the TV screen or on the internet. Last person that we could name a handful, but Ben Shapiro and Ivanka Trump are also millennials. And I bring up Shapiro just again for the podcasting side of things that's to come. We're going to hit 5 themes with each of the generations. TJ picked them for us. The first we're going to start with is self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
That characterizes
because
the
we're the
millennials.
best. We're the best generation. Just saying. Okay.
This is super interesting. Well, like, yeah, it's not tell us why, but it's go down that
Ain't
path.
nothing but a heartbreak. Okay, so I want to read this quote from her book. Even the most cursory listen to American culture in the 90s and 2000s revealed a thrumming undercurrent of talk about the self, with a chorus of advice on how self-belief is the key to success in life. Suddenly, it seemed, the self was everywhere. This, I feel like, is a central part of understanding what it is to be millennial, is that we were told for our entire lives that we are special and that we should be thinking of ourselves as special. And that is part of the culture, that's part of parenting, that's part of so many things that influenced how we see ourselves in the world. There's this movement, like we saw it advancing. Twen shows us the advancement through boomers and Gen X into this very sort of self-focused kind of mindset that is not necessarily narcissistic, but the elevation of the self and the importance of the self and having good self-esteem. Self-esteem was like all we talked about for my entire childhood. And it's a really big deal that you're supposed to have good self-esteem and you're supposed to work on your self-esteem. And if you're struggling at anything, the thing you need to work on is self-esteem. And that's just the water that we were swimming in.
What did it mean to be special?
See, that's part of the problem. Is that it was, and she goes into this a lot. I really appreciate that. There's a pretty big difference between the like believing in yourself kind of intention that was brought into this, and the end result, which is sort of an empty self-esteem, which is believing that I am special for the sake of being existing. The fact that I exist means that I'm special. On one hand, I think that's true. On another hand, it doesn't mean I'm going to be an astronaut or president or a football player. Like this, we were always told you can do anything you want so long as you set your mind to it. And the intention behind that is good and beautiful and pure. And the reality on the other side of it is just false. It's a house of cards.
So looking back, do you wish that people maybe told you you were all unique, which is different from special? Do you think the end result would have been any different? Because that's true. I mean, we are unique.
I feel like those go hand in hand.
Yeah,
It wouldn't have necessarily equated to anything different. I think there was my experience. It seems like there was a lot of really good, like, we want people to believe in themselves. We want people to know that they matter. We want people to feel encouraged about their efforts. But we also were really short-sighted in not allowing people to fail, in not allowing people to it's nice to have a participation trophy, of which I received several. Yeah. It's also nice to know that, like, working hard to ensure that I don't lose next time has value.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think there's something to say of, like, we still love you even if you don't get a participation trophy. Like, that felt like it was missing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that actually has nothing to do with how much we love you. You failed, and that's it. You failed. Yep. We still like you, but you failed. Like, that feels like that was missing.
Yeah. You lost, and that doesn't negate your value.
Right. It's just that losing was outlawed, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be really curious if there is a we here. We love you. Is there somebody who actually is the benefactor, the one who is giving out positive regard and their opinion matters, or is it just words spoken into this space of valuelessness?
That is an excellent question. I don't know the answer.
That's at least how I see it. Or I feel like the boomer generation, the millennials are real similar on this front, that they really do like kind of are looking for somebody to tell them that they matter in a different kind of way. And even this is why the millennials, it strikes me, have this as a theme, is that the boomers are trying to say that to them. The boomer culture, like this was the message they wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being spoken into, some of their children in that space. That's at least I feel like that was, never mind.
But that's part of the thing, though. I'm not sure that that's taken as a whole. I'm not sure that that we missed out on that message. I think millennials heard that message.
I agree.
Go ahead.
It wasn't I'm valuable because Joe thinks I'm valuable. It's I'm valuable and I'm walking in that cloak.
And because it's the water that we swim in, like it's the air that we breathe, it doesn't have weight. It doesn't have it didn't translate to effective foundational understanding of self. There's an awful lot of that empty self-esteem.
Yeah.
What do you think was, and we talked about it a little bit, but what do you think was missing? Like if you could go, like, was it just the willingness to fail or something bigger than that? Or
I think in large part, the giving us the opportunity to fail and get hurt and mess up. There were expectations placed upon us that I think were unrealistic, and we never learned the tools to manage that.
Yeah.
In a way. So I don't think it's fair to like, as a millennial, it is very easy for me to say the boomers are causing all of our problems and all of the things, because that's part of the zeitgeist. But the zeitgeist is, it's not fair to say any of that. I think that we were not necessarily given the opportunity to grow up at the pace at which we were handed. So I think we're going to get into this later, but she talks a lot about the slow life, like how life slows down, has slowed down over the last several generations. And because of that, like life got stretched out, and a lot of millennials didn't reach that kind of like late adolescence, early adulthood until later in their lives. And there's a lot of systemic reasons for that, like more education, economy, and all of the things. So we were looked at through the lens of this is how people behave in their 20s. But an entire generation's expectancy moved back a little bit. And so when we were being blamed for not buying enough houses, it was actually because you were just looking at the data too early.
Yeah.
For our generation.
Thing that hit me on this front was she wants to bring in a very controversial idea, which is pronouns. And she suggests that the movement from the collective pronoun we to the personal pronoun I really goes up.
Yeah.
In the work of millennials, in terms of, artwork and movies and the rest, you just see the personal pronoun becomes far more common. That struck me as interesting in terms of the self. I've said this with Gen X as well, that self-focus really kicks in with the boomers, amplifies in X. You're going to see it much more in millennials, and we're going to see it even more when we get to
we took
stuff
it
with
and
Z.
made it into an art form.
This is one of the reasons
Thank you.
Enneagram takes off. It's because it's language for your inner self.
Yep.
And it's really, and your inner self really matters. And at the same time, that balance between myself and the community as a whole, these you don't want to go too far down one side or the other, it seems to me.
So I see a lot of this like loss of real meaning in Gen Z. We'll talk about that next time, but I'm hearing maybe also some of it in millennial, right? Like, well, like in Incredibles, like if everybody's super, then nobody is. Like if everybody has value, then nobody does. What does that mean? Where does that leave me? We all know that the Enneagram offers real connection to yourself, connection to the hard parts of you, I'll say the bad parts of you, right? And also the good parts of you. Do you think that's also partly maybe why it took off, is because it maybe offered something real to people who were looking for something real that had like real weight to it? Do you think there's any merit in that idea?
I think it has sustained because it does both. I think it took off within the space of the navel gazing of take a quiz to find out which friend you are, take a quiz to find out which Harry Potter house you belong in, take a quiz to find out which Lord of the Rings character you are. Like the social media rise of this sort of mimetic typing was just fertile ground for the Enneagram to come in and be one of those things as well. And then a lot of us were like, oh, okay, it's more than that, and saw real value beyond the simple stuff.
Yeah.
My take is that it really took off in progressive Christian circles that were looking for new language to talk about their unhealthy inner life. They had been handed Reformed, Calvinistic categories of sin, which just were weak sauce and thin. A lot of evangelical language about sin is weak sauce. It doesn't actually point to anything, and it certainly doesn't point to themselves. They love pointing out the dysfunction of other communities. But a lot of us came to Enneagram and saw, oh, you're actually talking about growth and places that I struggle and things I know that are unhealthy about me in ways that not only are exposing, but you're actually giving me tools for self-betterment. And I think a lot of us got into it because it did a better job.
I think there's also a lot to be said about the way that even empty self-esteem can hold our faults differently than I think previous generations have been able to. I think a lot of millennials are very aware of their faults, but they don't identify themselves with their faults in the same way that previous generations might have. Like thinking of that Calvinism sort of mindset is like, I am a bad person because I am capable of doing these things. And I think more millennials would be along the lines of, I am capable of these things, but I'm a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard, not to get too far into religion, but I have heard and seen that for a big reason why people are leaving the church, right? Because I don't believe that I am an inherently bad person. So if that's part of the dogma that I have to believe, well, I'll just leave, right? So I agree with that.
Yeah.
To build on this, I think there's a growth in millennials on the self-esteem front, a movement away from self-focus into like a desire for connection. And a lot of practices that I feel like you hear in a lot of millennial language, wanting to be connected to the earth or wanting to elevate virtues like, of all things, I went to essentially a yoga class. The mantras being spoken, I associated with kind of a millennial culture that was like, feel the love around you, kind of mantras.
Yeah. Well, I think that helps bring us into the next big trait that I want to talk about, which is the fact that we're digital natives.
Let's do it.
Because, it's not just that we're the most special generation that's ever been, but also that we were born into a world that was changing and becoming interconnected in a way that nobody had ever seen before. I laughed reading this first line of her digital natives section. When I was growing up, every afternoon after school, I'd hike up my low-rise jeans and run up to the family computer to connect to the internet. After an enchanting cacophony of electronic dial-up tones, I'd be connected and would power up AOL's AIM chat to make sure I wasn't missing out on anything important. Millennials not only became very skilled at using AIM, but they are the only generation who's truly skilled at the now lost art of texting on a flip phone. And long before gaming became huge, they played Oregon Trail on their home computers and Super Mario Bros. On their Nintendos. And every single millennial that I have ever interacted with knows what all of those things are and can give you specific memories about each of those things because we all encountered them together.
What does the A stand for in AIM?
America. Okay, so it's America Online, AOL, and AIM is AOL's Instant Messenger.
It was only in America?
I'm certain that it wasn't, but that's definitely where it started.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I keep talking about all the old stuff. I'm just kidding.
Ugh. I was just going to bring up all the download discs from AOL. A disc. So there used to be these things called CDs.
Right.
It was a disc.
My dad
and
had
they
a lot
figured
of
out the amount of AOL CDs that exist in the world, and that there are probably whole dumps filled with AOL CDs.
What would you
because
put on
they
an
were
AOL
pervasive.
CD?
It was the download CD. So like you got the CD from a store, and then you
Like
took
a blank
it home
CD?
and you put it in your you put it in your computer and you used that, and that had the software so that you could get online.
Oh, it was like a computer game. Like Zoo Tycoon.
Yes, it was exactly like that.
I'm being funny. I actually had no idea. I thought it was like a website that you went to.
You had to have the software first.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And then you went onto the internet.
You used the software to connect to the internet.
What the hell?
Yeah. But
I'm trying to think of how that works today. Like I just bought a computer, and it has to have pre-programmed software that can get onto the internet that's just on the computer itself. So back in the day, computers didn't have software that could connect you to a cable. It was software that was exclusively for the computer that you purchased.
What did you use it for?
What did you use a computer for prior to getting online?
Yeah. Sorry, I sound like 10 years old.
No, this is fantastic. It actually is. It's going to illustrate a lot of the points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, it would be everything that you see in Microsoft Office for the most part, Word, Excel.
I guess that
and the
makes
rest
sense.
for the most part.
Yeah. All of that without internet access.
I've just only, like, my computer, my laptop is my going on the internet machine. Like, that's, so when you take away the going on the internet part, like, what else did you do on it, right? So, I mean, that makes sense.
This is part of the thing. It's that we grew up, millennials were born into an environment where things were going digital, but it wasn't the whole world yet. So everyone knew what computers are. Everyone interacted with computers, but Oregon Trail did not connect to the internet.
Yeah.
Our labs in schools did not have internet access at first. They were computer programs that you had to load on disks and like change out the disk if the program was too big. So thinking about like the movement, we have boomers who didn't have computers. We have Gen X who started to grow up with computers, and TV was becoming a big thing for Gen X. And then you move into this landscape where we don't necessarily go outside as often anymore because we have the TV and now we have the computer, and we can replace all of those like getting in trouble with our friends activities without parental supervision with connecting to people who live in different parts of the world, connecting to like, instead of tying up the one phone line for hours to have a conversation with one other person, we tied up the phone line to have multiple conversations with multiple people, and also like talk about our pictures and the music, like the different things that we talked about on the internet when we were teenagers. So
Was there a feeling? So there's a thing I think now in the internet where you will say stuff to people that you'd never say in real life, right? Yes. A lot of times it's talking about like all around bullying and this stuff, but it's also, there's like a joke that you could be texting a friend and you can be Snapchatting a friend and you're having two conversations and they're about two completely separate things, right? And some of it is stuff that you'd never say to them in real life. So as this was all kind of coming into common use, like those things that you were talking about with your friends online, were they still very much just regular conversations that you also would have had with them in person too? Like, was how you were talking to people and what you were talking about already changing as well?
The seeds, I think, were certainly there, but we were all learning a new language and figuring out how to have more common or more familiar conversations, but in the new language landscape. So the LOLs and the BRBs and like all of that stuff.
Right.
The internet was a brand new world that we were all learning together. So we were still talking
together.
about some of our normal stuff, but there was also a ton of conversations about the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
I think it's worth saying that, at least from my experience, what we were doing was trying to say the exact same things through a new medium. And what I see Gen Z and later millennials, it's, in the words of McLuhan, it's the medium is the message. The medium through which you're doing relationships fundamentally affects how you do relationships.
Yeah.
Older generations don't get that. We're trying to have the same relationships with just a different medium. We're moving from a phone call to text. Same thing.
Yeah.
But apparently, like the way your brain receives messages, relationships through a computer versus in person is incredibly different, and it affects everything about you, which we'll talk about as we keep moving.
Well, and like thinking about the rise and expansion of social media, like we can see the beginnings of it within AIM and chat rooms and all of that, and then this huge surge into the ways that we are connected to each other is not necessarily in person anymore. That also, I love this quote, this thing that she said, social media also explains a unique feature of millennial social movements. They are decentralized, without leaders, and focused on words and ideas rather than single concrete goals.
I really wanted to bring up that quote in this section. I'm glad you did. I think this is enormous.
And she goes in and talks about the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was a movement without a purpose. Like the fact that we are the 99% doesn't mean anything. But it was still a really big and really important movement, right? So there's this way that because we are special and because we understand that the world is digital and the world is changing into a digital one, and we're now connected in entirely new ways, we're less tied to the institutional representation. And you mentioned this before when you were talking about politics, that like the way that we understand politics is different now than it was 50 years ago. And part of that is because the internet allowed us to decentralize a lot of our ideas.
I think that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. The thing that hits me here is you can't name the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement because there isn't one. Yeah. And you can't name the leader of the No Kings marches that occurred before, which does a terrible disservice to the people who want to get involved because they don't have single concrete executable goals. It's a blob of energy that's a catch-all for all of the subjectivity coming into one place at one time, and you're easily dismissed. And until folks can actually focus and say, this is what we want. Martin Luther King Jr. died in wait, where was he on? He's in Tennessee, isn't he? Yeah. He was throwing a demonstration. They wanted higher wages for trash workers who were doing very dangerous jobs and were being paid very little. And he went and said, we are going to make a demonstration for this. And that's a huge loss for all of us in terms of how justice issues are argued for in our community. And it comes out of this, is what I want to say. It comes out of the fact that we're just used to screaming into the void. I'm used to screaming into the void. We'll see this across generations, that there's a technology that really characterizes who we are, especially the technologies we engage when we're young that are formative, not only to our experience of the world, but to the development of our brain and nervous system.
Yeah.
There's a reason, like, if I were to take all of our phones for a month, like, it would do something to you physiologically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Calm down, Katie. We're not going to do that.
No, I just
It's a
had a
hypothetical.
conversation with my fiance last night about how I've just been thinking about that a lot because I've been thinking about all the Gen Z stuff. And there's this whole movement to like get dumb phones. Like people are ditching their smartphones. So like I said that in a way that like, please, I don't want it anymore. Take it.
I will not be surprised when there's a massive backlash. You know, it's almost like we know the effects of smoking in my generation, and there was so much about like getting rid of this because of what it meant. And recently, a lot of anti-alcohol stuff in terms of the health effects. We know the health effects of the smartphone.
Yeah.
In terms of depression, in terms of anxiety, in terms of not being connected with people you love in ways that are meaningful to you as a animal. You know, you have biological needs, and the phone gets in the way of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, another worthy topic for millennials.
Well, there's a clear connection here to
Do
the
it.
next thing that I think is really important.
Right? Pervasive perception of poverty.
So you've all seen the memes. We're poor. That's why we can't afford to. That's why we're killing all of the industries. It's because we can't afford to keep supporting them, right? We're not buying houses because we're poor. We're not. Yeah, we're spending too much money on avocado toast, but that's to deal with the depression of not ever being able to own a home. He said in the house that he owns. So there is a very firmly rooted perception that millennials are po, right? Like that we are struggling with money.
Can't even afford the O or the R, apparently.
It's true. And one of the very interesting things that is in this book that made me rage with burning
I bet it
fire
did.
was just over and over and over and over again. The data does not support the idea that we're poor.
Yeah.
So we're higher earners than previous generations. She gives out a ton of data that Gen X is actually the ones that got screwed on the housing market.
I got stories.
And actually millennials in that like coming into the housing market like right at the right time, we did way better than others. There's a bunch of stuff there. There's more wealth, there's more higher wages. Here's the
thing.
Yeah. So a lot of my quotes are about showcasing that information is wrong. I think if you really want to get into that, buy this book. It's really good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data about how the fact that we do have higher wages, we do have more wealth, etc. All of those things. There's a really big point that I think she is missing.
I agree.
Really, really important. For me, that point is there's so much that we have to pay for all the time.
The rage is coming forth. Come on.
It's not just that housing, it feels more expensive. It's that also all of our utilities are more expensive. Mm-hmm. All of them. And there's 50 years ago, you had like 4 utilities, right? Now there's like 17 different services I have to pay for just to be in my house. And also, I'm required to pay for internet.
Yeah.
That's just a non-negotiable. I have to pay for an internet. And that means that I also have to pay for a phone. And that means I also have to pay for there's all of these services and the different streaming services and the memberships and all of the things and the Patreons and please support us on Patreon. Just all of the things. There's so many other things that we have to pay for that my parents did not have to pay for. I think that's a huge part of the perception of poverty.
Yeah. She also has this point about how you can't just look at what you're earning. You also have to look at like your net worth as well. And she's like, millennials picked up student debt in a way that nobody else had before.
Yep.
And so there's also, you have to pay back all your debt. And there's like, when you were talking, I was thinking there's all these packages you have to pay for now. Like you have to pay. We're saying like you have to. And like, this is part of the argument. Maybe technically you don't, but to have like a regular life where you can relate to what other people are saying and you don't feel like a total outsider when people are like, hey, have you watched that new show? There are things that you need to have, right?
Right.
Yes, you could be a tech, you'd be like anti-tech and not pay for anything, but then you're like a social pariah and nobody really wants to do that. So yeah, there's so much more. There's so many more things. And you have, you know, hundreds of dollars in debt that you have to pay every month for the next 50 million years. So,
so they like, we have to see the full picture here, right? In order to understand at least some of the pervasive perception is that like we were raised in an environment where we were told we could do anything. And we also like that there's also that like slow life thing is slowing everything down. And then so when we were 25 and our parents had already started their careers by that time, and a lot of them were beginning to own houses and like start their families, all of that stuff, we're putting all of that off till later. So if you take a snapshot of us at 25, it is not reflective of our parents at 25. But if you take a snapshot of us at 35, it may be more reflective of our parents at 25. So if you tell us constantly that we're the poorest generation, we might end up believing it, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, you also have social media, which is constantly parroting this thing that we're the ones who are struggling with money the most.
Yeah.
The housing crisis just wiped out an entire generation's wealth, except that we kind of recovered that before the second housing crisis in 2020. So like looking at the data is really valuable to remind us that like social media paints a different picture than what is real. And that's true across the board about all things.
This bringing up an Enneagram point, I wanted to hit, and I don't think you should type generations, but if you listen back through our, at least my take on Gen X, the anger and the physicality of my generation is pretty prominent in terms of we engage the world with our bodies. The emotional life of millennials has been all over our conversation, and now we're bringing up comparison.
Yep.
And comparison is a huge deal for the heart center for all people. And it's just worth naming that when thinking about one's value, sense of self, and place in the world, that comparison, if you add social media in a way that had never been experienced before, that may do something to the human body and organism and sense of self. And I think that this is entirely correct that we're seeing that here. I also think it's entirely correct. It may be worth naming that the early millennials and later millennials experience the housing market in a very different way. So if you're a later millennial, you're 21 in the year 2020, and you hit a buzzsaw there, you know, in terms of housing. But utilities, housing, and food, you're exactly right. The costs have gone up dramatically. On the flip side, you have the entire catalog of all music that's ever been written at your fingertips for free. You have every movie that has ever been made available nearly for free most of the time.
But man, it's so hard to pick something to watch.
Right.
Every single tool that you have ever needed that was digital prior to 1990 is now in your pocket, from a video camera to a calculator to a device that can communicate with people on the other side of the planet. It's like we can watch the greatest artists in the world perform live anytime we want. That is unheard of.
Without getting out of bed.
50 years ago, yeah.
Kind of live.
kind of like, right. There's a difference between
Right.
being in the room where it happened, as it were.
I think that's a good, like, the perspective is so important when we're talking about this idea. Like we have a perception of our poverty, but because we are an individualistic generation, we don't have a broader perspective of us actually in relation to other people, other parts of the world, other generations. Like there's if I feel like I am struggling with money, that is the reality. It doesn't matter if I'm doing way better than my parents were at this age. It doesn't matter if I'm doing way better than my parents were at this stage in their life, which arguably, like, I'm in my 40s, I'm still with my partner. My kid is doing fine and emotionally well-regulated. Like, I'm doing better than my parents were at this stage in their life, not necessarily at this age. And just to have one thing that really helps demonstrate this point, one of the issues that she brings up, like, has the rising tide lifted all boats, right? So if everything is better in general for everyone, has it actually benefited everyone? And one of the big ones that she brings up is gender. And part of why a lot of the people in my generation experience this sense of being poor has to do with the fact that men have not made the same gains as women. Her opening paragraph in that section is, millennials actually make more money than previous generations did at the same age, and that's true across all racial and ethnic groups. But that obscures a startling fact. Every single penny of the rise in younger adults' incomes is due to women's incomes. And this could get into a much larger conversation about our culture in general, but millennial men, obviously we're painting with broad brushes here. This is the whole gender conversation is a bigger one that we can have another day. Millennial men experienced less advancement. White millennial men experience less advancement than all the rest of our peers. Therefore,
What could possibly go wrong with that?
we did not see the kinds of advances that actually happened.
If it's the case that your culture, by its nature, has learned to be comparative in terms of looking at the world with a strong comparative lens, and white males as a segment of society have that experience, it can foretell quite a bit that we've experienced in the last 9 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is a place that our culture is in pain in a variety of ways. That is no knock on like I'm like absolutely for advancement, equity, in seeing all those who do fantastic work get paid for their fantastic work. Our culture has not developed the vocabulary or tools to deal with exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. The same generation that got a participation trophy for just showing up is now watching our peers get advancement trophies that they deserve and wondering where my trophy is.
What you see through a lot of communication networks that have been geared to my generation, to millennials and boomers, especially white males, and like I am the target of this information, so I'm very aware that it's out there, is you ought to resent the amount of attention all these other folks are getting. Like that's just the zeitgeist that's in those circles, you know, and you have whole media establishments based around kind of that posture in the world. Yeah. I personally believe that white males, Americans, matter. I have 2 children, both of whom are male. I'm a male. But people who look like me and have those characteristics have not been able to, in a healthy way, engage the way our culture has changed and their changing place as well. It's something like there's a stat presently. It's something like 70% of college graduates now are female, paired with nearly all of the prison population is male. Most of the suicides are male. Like, this segment of society hasn't figured out how to anchor into an economy that is very social, very emotionally intelligent. Emotionally intelligent people thrive in a culture like ours. And if your primary gift that you're bringing to the table is I can lift heavy things, that's going to put you in a certain economic position. Like, you aren't going to be at the front of the line, whereas being able to lift heavy things 100 years ago may have been a real value.
And we've been told that we can have anything that we want so long as we work hard enough. And
yes,
like, it's just a falsehood. And because non-white males are catching up to white males, it feels like something is being taken away from us.
Yeah.
When you've been on top, equality.
That is not a reflection of my personal feelings. I am speaking with the royal we.
No, you can see sociologically why it's the case that some people make this a racial issue in terms of their own self-identity and their own protests. They're not healthy enough to figure out how to make this about something else. And so the white nationalist club is open for business if they can poke you a couple times.
Yeah.
And that's why our country's in pain in large measure.
Okay, so here's my thought. I actually think this is a little more of a Gen Z thing, so I was going to wait to bring it up till next week. But I read something, funnily enough, on the internet the other day that was saying there has been some discourse around we need more resources for men, like therapy groups for men, houses for men, because for some men, it is easier to say, they say, hey, my feelings are hurt and I think my feelings matter. And other people say, yes, your feelings do matter, and so do other people's. And they go, other people's? No, I just want to talk about my feelings and how I'm hurt. And that's easier than actually admitting that other people's feelings do matter. And so then they get sucked into all this, like, yeah, your feelings do matter and other people's don't. So there seemed to be some parallel when I started this story into there is still something where some men, when you have been on top, being equal feels like oppression. And when you are used to 100% of what you say being listened to, when people stop listening to maybe 10% of what you say, that feels like nobody's listening to you, right? And instead of training men that that's just normal, they feel the need to, like, I want you to listen to 100% of what I'm going to say. And hey, these people on YouTube are telling me that 100% of what I say matters, so I'm going to go listen to them instead of, like, developing empathy, right? Because that's easier. But I do think that specifically is a little more Gen Z-ish. So we can wait for next week, but
I definitely think the seeds of it are there because, like, as we said, we're moving from a more centralized collectivism mindset into individualism. So it's much more focused on myself, and it is done so in a way that I can actually enter into silos very easily.
Yeah.
Without even knowing that it's happened, I can enter into silos where my opinion is the only thing that's ever heard.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone else is saying.
And speaking of tech is getting good enough now that it can pull you into something without you really realizing it, right? Like the beginning of this kind of, all this started because I watched one video of some woman crying on the internet because it was funny. And now I'm in all this stuff because it keeps getting recommended, all this thing. So it's very easy to get pulled into things.
Yep.
Yeah, the algorithms are out there, and it's been said by a handful of folks that in my generation, advertisers knew that they could sell a product if they could connect the human brain with a attractive sex-based image, that this is the easiest way to get people to purchase things. And in the last 15 years, we've realized a much more powerful force, and it's rage. Last topic we got is delaying adulthood, which you kind of pitched for a hot second there, but really comes into play with the finance side.
I think seeing the finances and this conversation about opinions and about, I think as we move on in this whole conversation, like everything becomes one a little bit, and so the fact that we're told that we're special, the slow life thing, the move toward individualism, the rise of social media, and the ability to spend all of our time and energy on the internet instead of out doing things, living lives. We have advanced education, like we're one of the highest educated generations that's ever been. But all of this leads into this delayed adulting, right? And like the pervasive idea, the mimetic idea of how hard adulting is part of millennial culture. And like we're delayed on committed relationships. We're delayed on starting our careers. We're delayed on purchasing houses. We're delayed on having children. We're delayed on all of these. We're a less sexually active generation than our peers, than all the generations before us, which is crazy.
It's getting worse.
Given the tremendous amount of sexuality that is in the zeitgeist, it is crazy that my generation has less sex than the generation before them.
Well, because sexuality isn't about sex now, I think. It's an identifier. It has nothing to do with sex.
Right.
Right.
It does have to do with mindset, with being a self-actualized adult at some, like you'd used the term incel earlier, which strikes me as like one of those just cutting kind of images in my mind. Mm-hmm. And that has psychological power. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's again, the resentment side of things. There are a lot of men who are pissed off. What do you do with all that energy?
Right.
And lo and behold,
start a podcast.
You have conversations you never would in real life.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's part of it. So like you have these the digital natives who were born into a world where they could go online and figure out how to say things instead of learning how to do it in face-to-face settings, which you have to learn at least some amount of empathy and like they're
meeting in the middle.
The fact of face-to-face means you can't say whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Truth.
A couple 100 years ago, it would literally get you shot in a duel if you said something that somebody else didn't like, right?
Yeah. Shot in a duel.
Yeah. And now you can not only say whatever you want, but you can say terrible, hateful things that you don't believe and never face consequences.
Yeah, it's just rage baiting.
And
you
so
just say terrible things.
We all learned that like we didn't learn the kinds of social skills that require you to work out face to face, but sexual interaction is face to face. Like not to discount there's a whole aspect of people who can't do physical interaction well, and there's I think the internet has helped provide space for a lot of people who don't have the means or ability or skills or whatever. Like there's some reason why they can't do face to face. Maybe it's long distance, maybe it's whatever, but we lost a lot of the skills that helped us do interactions normally to lead to perhaps sexual interaction, and that means we're having less of it.
On the positive side here, on the delayed adulting side, it seems to me that this is a huge benefit for females getting ahead in their careers, workforce. The birth control itself will go down as the most important discovery of this last 100 years, in my view. Because of this, it changes fundamentally how genders engage their culture. Everything is affected by this. And if women don't get pregnant, then they can put forth real investments in themselves and their ability to serve others with their skills that goes beyond a domestic environment. And our culture is gaining massively from the insights, social intelligence, just interpretations of what we ought to be doing as a culture that we have never experienced before. This is when the male voice is diminishing, because actually female voices need to be heard and are actually saying things that are truly transformative into our culture. And they can do so because of exactly this, that adulthood has been delayed. And so they have platforms from which they can say things, and that can be intimidating to some.
Yeah.
And exactly as you're saying, it can be liberating, empowering, and transformative for others.
Yeah. This fancy new idea of women's liberation or whatever means that women are actually get to have a say in whether or not they have sexual interaction. They get to have their own say in when they get married and when they have kids, and if they work, if they stay at home with their kids when they work. Like, there is so much that is so different than it has been in any previous generation.
So women my age talk about the male loneliness epidemic, and women have a lot of different opinions on that. But what it is, I will say I have a little bit of sympathy for men who were raised on get a good job, take care of your family, that's your role. Now women are like, oh, I actually have a good job. I don't need you to have a good job. Are you nice? Right? Do you listen to me?
Do you do chores?
Right, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I have 2% sympathy. The rest is you should learn to do chores. But there is this that is very pervasive in women my age, and maybe I'd say like my age and like 10 years up. So like late millennial, very, very early Gen Z. There is just this very clear, I don't need you to provide for me. I can get a credit card in my own name. I can own my own house. Jeff said, I can take birth control until I decide not to, right? I don't need you to do any of that. Do you have all these other things that I am looking for in a partner? I'm not looking for a husband. I'm looking for a partner, right? Yeah. Can you fulfill those roles? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, when women are asking that of you, when you felt like you were supposed to do all this other stuff, then they get mad.
Yeah.
Right.
And because of the digital native part, didn't learn the skills to interact
you yell about
more appropriately. Yeah.
Right. Instead of reacting with, oh, maybe I should develop these things, you go online and you yell about it because that's what releases anger, So.
And that's all part of the perception as well. Like we perceive ourselves as poor, but we also, there's a lot of millennials that like, we deserve these things. The conversation about the nice guy in the friend zone is entirely part of this. We deserve this because this is how I behave. And it's like, well, that's not how people work.
That's not how, right. Yeah. That's not how anything is ever, right, exactly. Yeah.
But I was told from a very young age that so long as I do X, Y, and Z, I will get this reward. If I show up to this date, I will get a participation trophy.
Right.
Last thought for me on these things is it can't be overstated how fast culture is moving right now. Just this conversation about the internet and birth control. We have 80,000 years or so of human evolution up to this moment in time, and everything suddenly changed.
Yep.
And your brain and nervous system are not necessarily wired to handle what is taking place. Katie and I are doing some conversations around gender, and I've been trying to put my thumb on what are the real differences we can name between men and women. And literally the only thing I'm coming up with has to do with physical strength. And nearly everything is about the same. And we could probably talk. I'll be curious because I want to float some stuff to Katie on this. But when you have birth control and formula, domestic roles immediately evaporate. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's an entirely different highway that you're driving.
Uncategorized. I would not say they evaporate. Somebody still has to play the role of feeder, right? But now it can be the dad because formula exists.
That's right.
Or it can be a caretaker.
Yeah, caretaker.
That's my last word. You guys got last word on millennials?
We didn't get to the fifth topic, but the idea of someone being woke, that is part of our generation and is pervasive for good or ill, this is part of how we see the world. That my gender is not the only thing that matters, that Black lives do matter, that the Me Too movement is important, that this is part of the individual but also collective we are special generation, is that all of us are also special.
Well said. Last word, Kate?
No, I think you all said it very well. I don't have anything I would say would just be repeating. So
We can pick up the last of these next week. We're talking Gen Z. We're going to talk about Katie's generation.
Youths.
yay!
I normally sign off by saying, TJ, you got anything else?
I got nothing, man. I do want to say I tried really hard to find a good ironic t-shirt for this episode. And I just don't have enough ironic t-shirts anymore.
Got rid of them.
Show the tattoo.
My sister is thrifting all of them in the thrift stores now. Is that an ironic tattoo?
The hardcore biker nature of it, that's the ironic part.
TJ has a heart with mom on his shoulder for those of you listening on the podcast. Got any ironic tattoos, Katie?
No, I have no tattoos.
0 tattoos.
That's a very not... Gen Z all have tattoos. I have no tattoos.
It's a wiser choice, in my view, as a man with a sleeve. She's Katie Whitlock. She's a treasure to us for sure. He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook, who you aren't. Just is not interesting.